And so we started working with them under that capacity. And I realized very quickly that the people I helped the most were the ones that were doing well. They looked good on paper. They had a podcast or a book, or they're doing things. They've been in business at least 5 years. However, they're working way too many hours for where they are at this point in their journey. And so that's when I was like, okay, your business should support your life, not consume it. How can we help?
Most people rotate relationships, not maintain them. I think that's a really poignant. We have a sort of limit to the number of people we can have in our life. It's very difficult to maintain more than a few dozen relationships at any level of intimacy. But it's the intimacy in those relationships that actually makes the difference in how fulfilling those relationships are going to be, right? Both professionally and personally. And just a little bit of organization around them, whether it's in an Excel spreadsheet with a name and a photo and when you last sort of spoke to someone, or in your CRM, which does the same thing, but kind of on steroids, you're just doing that little bit more than everyone else. And as a result of that, you stand out. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of More Clients, Less Effort. I am joined by an incredible guest today that I'm super excited to drill into. I'm joined by Kris Ward, team building and system strategist, author, podcaster, coach, and speaker. Kris is creating a movement where your business supports your life instead of consuming it, which I absolutely love, Kris, because I think so many people get consumed by the business and then just that's the thing that becomes life. Kris is also the founder of Win the Hour, Win the Day philosophy. After the loss of her husband, Kris returned to her full-time to her work as a marketing strategist. She was relieved that her business not only had survived absence, but was growing, and it's a really hard thing to do. Now, Kris has completely changed the landscape of entrepreneurs by sharing the successful practices that allowed her absence. Kris has also shared the stage with such luminaries as Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup from the Soul, Kevin Harrington from the original Shark Tank, James Malinchak from ABC's Secret Millionaire, Sharon Lechter, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad co-author of one of my favorite books, and Joe Theismann, an NFL All-Star and commentator, to name a few. Kris also has featured on award-winning podcast, radio, and TV shows. Kris is also an acclaimed podcast, as I mentioned. You can hear Kris on her own podcast, Win the Hour, Win the Day, which I've listened to a couple of episodes of, and they're awesome, where she has engaging conversations with dynamic guests covering a variety of business topics so that you can get your next win now. Kris, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Tim. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the invite.
No, you're welcome. Super random question to start with. If you were to have a Marvel or DC-esque superpower, what would it be?
Oh, okay. I'm assuming superpowers are generic because I don't know the difference between the two. So I'm going to tell you, I'm what I call a recovering rushaholic. So if you take our entrepreneur power quiz, you'll find out which personality you are. So I still have to learn that speed is not my superpower, that you can skim over things, and we think as entrepreneurs going faster and faster gets us more results. Having said that, as a recovering rushaholic, I think I would pick flying because I could move around quicker. That's what would be my answer. How's that?
Yeah, no, I love it. It's a tough one to choose, isn't it? If you had to choose one superpower, like talk to machines or fly, assuming we could actually fly fast, right? Teleportation.
Yeah.
I think I'll just teleport. I'm not going to bother with flying.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Kris. I'm curious, like, we're going to get into the story of, I guess, what you learned when your husband passed and what happened there. But I'm really interested how you, I guess, got into this idea of entrepreneurship. What was your muse for you to start your business in your first place?
You know what? I think I was always an entrepreneur at heart. I just didn't understand it. I had in another career, people said, oh, I paired things really well together, like got win-win. So I guess like a business. And I didn't have a lemonade stand, but I did babysit when I was very young. I was fighting with my mom at the age of 12. I can see now why I lost the fight. I wanted to babysit. She's like, you're 12. But now I look back when I was 13 and waited for that day. I had like rebooking packages, I had combos, I had incentives, I had I wouldn't even, when they would leave chips for you and stuff, I wouldn't eat that because I didn't want it to affect their overhead. It's like, listen, if they're buying me chips and that costs money, I want to be ahead of the competition because I'm going to be cheaper. You're not going to have to feed me. I will not eat that. I'm working here and I will not add cost to your day. So I think I always had that mindset. I just didn't know what it was called.
Yeah. Where do you think that influence came from for you? I mean, my first muse was Uncle Scrooge. That's how I got into business. Was
I
it
don't
for
think it was that linear for me. I really don't see that. It was just how my mind worked. It was
Yeah.
just it. So I can't give anyone particular credit. It was just like when I had that babysitting, I looked at that as how can I make this an enterprise? How can I do more with less? How can I book out further? How can I increase my rate? How can I get people to want to make sure they lock me in before somebody else gets me? So it's just how the brain was wired, I guess.
How did you start Win the Hour, Win the Day? What was the kind of catalyst for that?
So when I did start my business, I don't know, 14 plus years ago, my focus was market messaging. And the first couple years I was working insane hours, like day and night, night and day. And so,
To get into
yeah,
if I work harder, I will go faster, right?
yes. And my husband said I was always stealing from sleep, like getting up earlier and earlier and staying later and later, right? And so, my gosh, like he was my biggest fan. And so I realized after about the 2-year mark, when I was told very gently that I was starting to lose some of my charm, that I was exhausted all the time and very edgy. And that was not bringing out the best in me. Like everything was just, if it wasn't work, it was an interruption to work. So I realized, oh my gosh, this cannot be. I just can't be doing it this way. And so I literally went from working 16 hours a day down to 6. Now, that did not happen overnight. That's a story all on its own. But luckily I did, because it was a few years after that my husband was diagnosed with colon cancer. And I was pulled away from the business for about 2 years. When I returned after his passing, my existing clients had no idea of my absence. It was just not how we navigated his journey. We were very positive in nature. The local business community did not know. And so they kept saying to me, like, how could we have not known? And if you could do that, then maybe you could help me get to my kids' soccer games or start spending time with my family and friends and all this stuff that I've been ignoring, thinking that just once I get past this next thing, I can stop sacrificing my life. And so we started working with them under that capacity. And I realized very quickly that the people I helped the most were the ones that were doing well. They looked good on paper. They had a podcast or a book, or they're doing things. They've been in business at least 5 years. However, they're working way too many hours for where they are at this point in their journey. And so that's when I was like, okay, your business should support your life, not consume it. How can we help? And so it really just blossomed from there.
Was that a transition from what you're doing?
Yeah, as I said,
to your husband's illness and passing. Did the business pivot at that stage to kind of?
well, that's as I said in the
clients?
story. Yeah, they started saying, well, how could you have done that if you were away? Now, previous to that, I did have some people say that I run my small business with the efficiency of what they would call a big business or a real business, as us little entrepreneurs. And so there were people pulling that information from me at certain points, and we started calling it the Success Academy, but that really snowballed and blossomed when I came back. And they're like, no, you got to focus on this. I need this more than I need the marketing. Can you help me out? And so that's where the transition really blew up.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that we take this business, and it's a bit like an Oliver Twist movie, right? Can I have some more, please? That's your business, right? It's going to come back at you with your hands out and ask for a bit more. And it's so easy to lose sight of the fact that the business is not the life. The business, as you say, it's not there to consume you. The business there is to facilitate the lifestyle that you want, right? It's there to help you with your lifestyle, support what you want to do, the time, location, freedom, who you want to work with, where you want to work with them from, all those sorts of things. And it should be able to do that. And I think the fantastic thing about what you've done, I did it last year. I actually went off to Europe for a couple of weeks for the Rugby World Cup, and literally deliberately did that to see what would break in my business. And thankfully not too much stuff did, but it was interesting to see what broke in the business and what didn't break, just by stepping away from it and seeing, well, which of our systems are actually working? Where am I the bottleneck?
Yeah, I know we all start this journey for the freedom lifestyle, but I do remember when what I call the dark years, all of a sudden one time I was up to 2 o'clock in the morning working on something, and I realized I'd started at 5, and I thought, there are laws in this land to protect me from that. Like, you could not ask me that as an employer. And I'd be like, are you kidding me? How outrageous. There's no way I'd quit this job, and you can't legally do it. So the freedom lifestyle is really just a freedom to kick yourself around if you don't put parameters in place. So yeah, it was for, you start that business for a whole bunch of reasons. And here's what I want everyone to hear. If you say, once I get past this next thing, ding, 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 that's the alarm bell, because there will always be a next thing. Life has interruptions. And so you need to be able to have a business that, again, supports your life instead of consuming it.
Yeah. What was the big realization moment for you that other people had this issue? I mean, obviously you've just naturally fallen into this space of efficiency and speed, and I don't want to have to do this twice, so therefore I'll create a system for it. What was the big realization moment for you when you started to see that other people had this challenge?
Well, as I explained, they started to approach me after I came back to work when they had found out what happened, and they did not know I was away. So they just kept asking me with more and more urgency, well, if you could do that and we didn't know you were away, then clearly you could help us. And so that's where it began.
I'm going to throw a statement at you that I've heard said before, and I love the fact that you were working 16-hour days, and this is crazy, right? I've heard recently that most business owners, particularly in Australia, and I'm sure that the same is true of Canada and the US and other parts of the world, that most business owners earn less than $50,000 a year. That's their take home, right? So typically less than the average wage if you were to work for someone else. And yet twice as much, right? We're not all doing 16-hour days, thankfully. And certainly as an employee, you would never ask your employees to do 16-hour days. And so if you're earning less than the average wage and working twice as long, at what point do you go, hey, I'm better off getting a job at McDonald's?
Well, I don't know, but I would tell you, I guess that's a personal decision. I would say one of the things I talk about all the time is what brings that hourly wage down is how many hours you're working, right? So I've dealt with people like, let's say, video production company, and he had a really big client, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's like a $15,000 day. And this was great, except for the fact that because he had no systems and processes in place, like our super toolkits, and he didn't have a team, like our win team or what is next team, it took him like 2 weeks to edit and process that. Now, here's the problem. A, they're looking for a turnaround that's quicker than that. But B, he didn't have a 15 grand day anymore, because once you put all the hours in over the next 2 weeks, now that really brought the cost down. And that's one of the things I talk about with the 3Ds. The first one being damaging overhead, second, delayed income, and 3, diminished opportunity. And damaging overhead, what people don't realize is that's you. So if you could sell a package for $100, let's keep the math really simple. When you're trapped in the web of admin and you're busy doing the busy work, then you're not out there bringing in more clients to sell those packages to. And so you're actually billing your company, your agency, even if it's just you, that $100 an hour, because you're the damaging overhead. And that's incredibly costly, especially when we have so much opportunity now to have amazing virtual assistants and talents around the world for $5-6 an hour. And the second one is delayed income. What does it cost you when you got a client in June that you could have had in January? And what if they'd given you one referral? And then the third one is the most painful, I think, is diminished opportunity. When somebody's like, oh my gosh, Tim, I wish I'd known you did that. I just signed on with somebody else. But you were so busy trapped in the business that you weren't able to get that message out. And I didn't know, and I missed the opportunity is gone because they're locked into somebody else. So these are where it comes into, yeah, that's how it beats down to being not a high revenue generating income when you're running your own business.
I think also in that business owners generally, particularly in professional services, right? So if you're a coach, consultant, selling your stuff, we also get so comfortable with this idea that we're selling the top line revenue. So it's $200 an hour or $150 an hour, $100 an hour. And we think, oh my God, that's so much money compared to maybe what I earned in corporate or somewhere else. Not realizing that's just your top line revenue. You've also got all those other costs. And if we're looking at profitability, which is ultimately what we want to create from our business, it's not just top line revenue. We want to create profit.
No.
There's two ways to do that. We either increase our prices, which we probably should do, but also create efficiency in how we deliver that. And I think those are really important. I want to pull out two things you said there as well, though. You just drop them in very casually. Talk to me about your win team and your what is next team. Let's explain that to the audience.
Yeah, so I call it your what is next team so that you can get to what is next, right? And so what happens is so many of us have been trained by the corporate world and we're operating under this really what I call a very parentified system. So when you bring on somebody, it's like, oh, people say, oh, it takes too much time. It's just easier to do myself. Yes, because you're going with that parentified model where you bring somebody on, you give them work, you check the work like a parent or a teacher. And we've all seen jobs where maybe we were providing a service and then all of a sudden they make us a manager. And now my job is to manage other humans instead of doing the original thing I went to school for, right?
Mm.
So what I would say is you want to have a setup so that you have a team that really, frankly, becomes like your peers. And if they're not managing you, you're definitely leaning on them. And the initial setup and how you meet with them, how you communicate with them. We've established a leadership program for anyone that we find hiring on board for our clients. And we do that. We're not an agency because you don't want an agency that's a whole nother conversation for a bunch of reasons. But what we do that for our clients just so that there's not a learning curve for them with the hiring process because it's a whole thing on its own. But when we find someone for you and we introduce you to them and you get the final word, then they go into our leadership program and our certification program. And that helps them learn how to do scrums and super toolkits and all these things. So it really makes for quite an impressive win team. I have one client and when she started with us, Christine, she was a referral and I don't encourage this, but it happens. She missed her first appointment because lots of times people are like, their hair's on fire. They're just in a crazy situation. And it's like, oh my gosh, right? And if they had control over their day, they probably wouldn't need me. So it does happen. I don't encourage it, but sometimes they miss the meeting. Well, she missed the second one. So I said, all right, who's the fool? I'm not doing this again. Well, she begged me for the third, please, I will promise I will get there. So we showed up. Long story short, we did take her on. And she was saying that she was on some sleep medication because her like cortisol or adrenaline, all this other stuff, and she's working insane hours. And the funny thing was she dealt with companies that were between $5 and $10 million who were selling their business. So she had to get their system set up to sell. And she said, Kris, how could you possibly help me? This is kind of what I do. But we did help her. And we got her started her win team. She just needed one person. Well, in the year, she was gone to Costa Rica for a month with no Wi-Fi. Her income quadrupled and she worked like definitely 1/3, 1/4 of the time that she used to. Long weekends, short days, all kinds of stuff. And so it's really just about getting you in a position. It's not difficult. It's kind of simple, but it's very strategic how we set you up so you can execute at this level.
Yeah. Talk to me about your super toolkit. I know you've got a whole bunch of super toolkits. I've seen one with your podcast stuff the stuff you sent for me for this show, which is impressive to say the least. Talk to me about what is a super toolkit? How does someone use it in their business?
Okay, so standard operating procedures, often people say, well, I have it all in my head. It's just easier to do it myself, right? And the problem with that is many things. First of all, you can't assign that work to somebody else. And we don't even get me into the science of studies and your brain and how it remembers things and all that other stuff. And then you're also using brain power. You can't create an idea and hold an idea at the same time. So there's all that. But the problem with standard operating procedures is they're traditionally not written by the end user. They're static in nature, and they're usually there just to cover liability. And they have a lot of work to build them, and they become outdated really quickly. With our super toolkits, they're dynamic breathing documents that are always evolving and always giving you more and more bandwidth on your calendar. So whatever your next thing is, like when I was like, oh my gosh, I wrote my book. Okay, this is great. Whew, it's done. Well, that's done. But now I need to be on podcasts. I need to find time on my calendar to be on podcasts and then speaking gigs. And so the next thing just gets you to more things. So you have to have things in play that will allow you to constantly, I don't want to use the word compress, but find more efficiencies and take less brain power so you can do more of what you call the real work or ambitions so you can have a bigger impact on your audience and the marketplace.
I think that's that thing. I mean, again, we're talking about that efficiency that allows you to go faster, isn't it? Right. And even as you talk, I'm thinking of how I organize things in my Google Drive for my team and going, I think there's some opportunities in this to create.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It's not just a static document. If you create something, what is the next thing that we want to do, right? And take that feedback from either your team on how they're using it or from your customers, how they're interacting with it, and go, that's a really good idea. Let's put that into our process.
And I just want to be cautious about the word faster, because I constantly thought that my speed, listen, a lot of the people I deal with are the go-to person for a lot of people in their life, and they move quickly and they get stuff done. And the problem with that is then you subscribe to that ideology of, oh no, you got to go fast and you got to race time. And I really believed in that for years. So the super toolkits are not about, it's allowing you to achieve things faster, but if anything, it really slows you down, so that when I sit down to do purposeful work, I'm in a calm state and say, okay, I'm now in creation mode. And it's really, to me, what I call energy management instead of time management, so that you really have, you should be able to do something that requires the same significant brain power at 4 o'clock in the afternoon that you did at 9 o'clock this morning. So it's really about starting the day refreshed and leaving fresh.
I'm going to ask this as a rhetorical question because I suspect that I know the answer, but who in your business is responsible for creating your super toolkits and checking the content of them?
So it's always a collaborative effort, and it's whoever needs to use them. It's what super toolkits, we're always queuing them, CUE, creating, using, and editing them. So that's a great question, because a lot of people would think, okay, I got to make these standard operating procedures. I'm going to come in on Sunday, I'm going to write out all the steps because it's my business. But the person sweeping the floor should buy the broom. So if we're doing something with my team, and let's say we're trying something new on LinkedIn, it's like, okay, who does that? Maura? Okay, so let's start building a super toolkit for that. And we'll be doing that in our little scrums, but it's a very collaborative effort and we're always tweaking it. So no one person is assigned that. That is the problem with SOPs.
I actually really like that idea. I think we actually need to foster a greater sense of entrepreneurship amongst our team for them to own part of the process that they work on.
Well, yeah, because they're the ones that know. Like, who am I to tell them how to do their job? They would know it better. I mean, that's where you get into corporations where something comes down from upper management or head office. You're like, sure, okay, fine, we'll do it that way. Do you have any idea how much time that wastes? And it doesn't work. And this is why, because they don't know, right? That's always the gap. And now, again, that's a whole nother thing. There's the whole idea of scrums and the evolution of what that means in agile marketing and businesses. There are bigger businesses now following some of these philosophies, what I call the scrum mentality, which is where some of our super toolkits were birthed from. But the point is, this is completely ineffective the way we've been doing it for a long time. And when you think you're, as an entrepreneur, coach, or consultant, that you're bringing it to your small business and you think, oh, this is how the big boys and girls do it, there's a lot of inefficiencies in there, and you just don't see it because you look at that and say, oh, they got all kinds of millions of dollars. Sure, they do, but they're wasting all kinds of millions of dollars. So you really you think the ambition is to follow that path, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What's the system that you have in your business that really helps you either win, attract, convert, or keep more clients that you're super proud of?
With the super toolkits, you mean?
I don't know, with anything. Whether you've got a toolkit around how you attract clients, whether around client retention, what's one that you use in your business that you go, this is good. I'm really proud of this one.
I'll change that question a little bit because I'm going to give you something that I think serves more people. One of the things, systems that we have in our super toolkit is we have what we call a networking, they call it Kris's networking. So for example, any interaction I have, like someone like yourself or someone's on my podcast or a client or whatever interaction I have in our super toolkit. So maybe through my super toolkit for being a guest is different than being a host. However, in there, it will be add that to Kris's network. And so what happens was, I was realizing years ago when I was busy, I would have a contact and be like, yeah, I should keep in touch with them. And you put your head down, you work, you realize it's been a couple of years, or you have no real reason to reach out to them. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, I kind of lost that relationship. And it's like, I was rotating relationships instead of maintaining them. And I realized that when I started my own podcast, the Win the Hour, Win the Day podcast, where we talk about anything from sales to social media, and I was making really amazing connections, and I'd connect with them a few weeks on social media, but then the feed changes and you haven't talked to them in a while. And so in this network sheet, the first column is their name. And then there's a little picture because we remember pictures and faces more than names. And then how I met them and something personal about them. and a few notes, and then I have a sheet. So I can see here when was the last point of contact I had with them. And in my Google Docs sheet, I can see, oh, I referred somebody to Tim's show, or I introduced Tim to here. So I have this information, and it's huge, and it really allows me to sustain these relationships. And also sometimes I can make connections to somebody. Hey, I'm going down my sheet. You'd be good for his show, blah, 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 right? So that's something where when it's spoon sped into different super toolkits, it really gives you a network. And then sometimes I'll make an introduction to someone. They're like, oh my gosh, Kris is the best. She remembers me and she always, I'm top of mind. It's like, well, because I'm going down the list, right? So little things like that can really make a huge difference in where you are in your business, and just by adding different nuances to different processes.
I think it's that thing though, Kris, like, because as you say, right, most people rotate relationships,
Yeah.
not maintain them. And I think that's a really, really poignant thing. We have a sort of limit to the number of people we can have in our life. It's very difficult to maintain more than a few dozen relationships at any level of intimacy. But it's the intimacy in those relationships that actually makes the difference in how fulfilling those relationships are going to be, right? Both professionally and personally. And just a little bit of organization around them, whether it's in an Excel spreadsheet with a name and a photo and when you last sort of spoke to someone, or in your CRM, which does the same thing, but kind of on steroids. You're just doing that little bit more than everyone else. And as a result of that, you stand out.
And this is where we get a little too, the problem with that is we always think tech and automation can fix things, but somebody has to really be able to see that at a glance or supervise it. So the idea of having a machine that can produce a bunch of widgets, great. But if nobody's supervising that and they come back and the machine's been shut down for 3 weeks, that's a problem. So that's the thing, is I fell prey to all these complicated CRMs, and here's Tim's birthday and his dog is this many years, but you have to tap into that and look into it to be stimulated with that thought. Where a simple spreadsheet, I'm just going, there's your picture. Oh, I'm scrolling to find something for somebody else. And I see Tim's picture. I'm like, oh, what? He's in Australia. I should connect him with so-and-so. So I'm tripping across it because it's at a glance. So that's where we tend to go wrong with entrepreneurs and all the more and more AI stuff coming at us. Is, as I say to my clients, anything I show them is usually either free or next to free or something really simple, because the depth in which we have all these resources make things very complicated, but not efficient. So the saying goes, it's not about being effective. What's really being efficient is having less to do.
Yeah, I love it. And the other, on the flip side of that, obviously, is if we make people feel that they are important to us, we will be important to them.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And whatever system you use, okay, whether you, have a board on a wall with people's photos on it that you need to remember, or a spreadsheet, or your CRM, or however you do it, right? A diary, a UC calendar, whatever it happens to be, is this interaction between, I need someone to actually do this thing, right, to make people feel important, and then we will be important to them, which is so critical, all right? And then you'll get all those things. It won't be delays. You'll come to the front. That's really awesome, Kris, and I love that. So many takeaways in that process, right? Again, just make people feel important, whatever system you use to do that, and they're going to be important to you. I'm going to pivot again, just to wrap up, Kris. I'm curious to know actually, let's go with this one first. How big is your team?
5 people. And I think that's a big team. I don't need more than that. And when I talk to my clients about that, I think a big team can be between 3 and 5 people. But also know that when I talk about having even one VA, it's a philosophy, not a number. So you could have a team of 1. It's how it's navigated that makes it a team, not the number you have.
Yeah. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Pet peeve. I don't know. I'm not particularly impatient. I guess, I don't know. I don't know if it's pet peeve. I don't like people being rude. I think it's very easy to be nice to people. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm good. I don't have one that comes to the surface.
Right. What's your morning routine look like?
I get up when I wake up. So that's anytime I wake up. It could be anywhere between 5:30 and say 7. When I'm rested, I wake up. And then I go work out. I'm so lucky. I have a little gym in my basement, and then I have a smoothie and I shower and jump into work. And then I usually have a quick scrum meeting with my team.
Yeah, that's awesome. I must admit that I know people often live by alarms, and if I've got an early morning podcast, I'll set the alarm. If I've got an early morning flight, I typically won't sleep because I think I'm going to sleep through my alarm. But I reckon one of the best things I ever did was throw away my alarm clock. on most days?
Oh, it seems so violent to me now. I couldn't imagine something yelling at me to get me out of bed. But I mean, I don't sleep in much, but I just wake up when I'm rested.
What do you think is the most important lesson you've learned over your career?
I think for me, I think we all still fall prey to this is thinking like you have to get it right. I'm trying to look professional. So I get it right and try to fuss with it and do all that stuff where the biggest companies in the world, the most successful, the billion-dollar companies, software companies, they put out something and say, hey, we know this is flawed. We're in beta, test it out, give us feedback, and we'll keep improving. And we accept that. But for us, it's like, oh my gosh, got to make this right, got to make this right. And so that's another thing with the super toolkits. We help our clients get things to market faster because the whole idea is it's ideas to execution. When you look at somebody and you have professional jealousy and they're doing more than you or whatever, it's just they're getting their ideas out faster. And that comes with having some bandwidth on your calendar and understanding how to execute in a really efficient way and not getting in your own way by trying to make everything just right and just so and getting caught up in what you think looks professional. Get it out there, get feedback and improve it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where do you turn when you feel stuck?
When I feel stuck, I don't feel stuck a lot, but if I am stuck, I definitely meet with my team. And that's the thing is when you have a win team, it really is like peers. And I will bring something to them and say, okay, here's what we're doing. And I'm stuck. And they will come up with amazing ideas.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we don't lean on our teams enough, right? We just think,
well, I don't even think,
I don't even
know.
Do stuff, right? They actually have really good ideas if you ask them.
They do, especially when you create that environment, right? That culture. So it's not even leaning on them. I really see them as my peers more than my team. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kris, I really appreciate you joining us today. There's so many great ideas in that. I'm going to be adopting some of them myself. You can also get a copy of Kris's book. I absolutely recommend it. Jump onto Kris's podcast as well over at Win the Hour and Win the Day. We'll put all the details, links and everything in the show notes. You can grab those there. Kris, thanks for sharing such incredible wisdom and some of your journey on today's show.
Thank you for the invite. I appreciate you.
Guys, if you enjoyed today's show, please like, share, do all the normal stuff that you might do. Someone who's going to get value from this, and I'm sure that so many people in your world would get that value. We'll catch you on another episode of Win More Clients, Less Effort real soon.